Time. To us, time is the great challenge. Okay? Teachers are the people who form, create, manage time. That's what we do. We manage time, people's time. And so time, how we deal with time is a big one. There's some very interesting things. You can see this thing from Malcolm Gladwell. There's a research, usually roughly referred to as expertise, research and expertise. Right? So, let me see. And there is a popular book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers. And outliers means somebody who is an exception, right? Somebody who's not the normal. The people who have achievement outside the normal. So the idea here in that book, he did studies of people like Bill Gates. What was it about Bill Gates' background? You had other musicians, hockey players, everybody. He looked at different people who had higher achievements from the rest of their field and the rest of the domains. And one of the things he one of his conclusions was something like, I think he says something like, talent is the desire to practice. Okay? Practice. The active engagement in a field or an activity. Practice. That's what leads to expertise. That's what leads to it. And the number in expertise studies that keeps coming up all the time is 10,000. 10,000 hours of practice. Whether you're doing computer programming, whether you're doing Chinese, or whether you're doing English, or whether you're doing chess, playing chess, or dancing, or playing hockey. It's how much time you put onto it that makes the difference. Even gifted people have to put the time on it. And what he says is, when you look at it, gifted people are those who desire practice, who like to practice. Okay? So, I don't always like to use my daughter as an example, but my daughter, her main talent at this point in time is speaking Japanese. Right? And she, I'm trying to get her to study Chinese, so when you see her, speak to her in Chinese. Right? You see it? Okay? We're trying to get her focusing on Chinese, that's why she's here. But she does Japanese, but she will do it on her own. She will read Japanese manga on her own. She watches Japanese anime on her own. She does her homework from Japanese school on her own. She will do homework from Japanese school much more readily than doing homework from her regular school. Right? So she, in a way, we're going to say, her talent is Japanese, and mainly because she practices it. So, that's our goal is practice. How do we get practice into the whole thing? And what do we mean by practice? We have to define a clearly way. What do we mean when we say practice? Okay. So, some people have already seen this, but this is a little demonstration of something, of time, okay? Each one of those squares is 25 hours of practice, or 25 hours usually of class. All right? And this is how long it takes to get from 0 to superior in a language like Chinese, for example. So I usually let this thing run out because it's kind of boring, tedious, monotonous, not interesting. Just but that's it. That's the idea. Keep this in mind about how much time it takes to develop expertise in what we're trying to do. And then what can we do? How do we manage time? This is why, if we can manage time in a Chinese language course, in a career of learning Chinese, or we can manage time in other kinds of training too. It's basically, that's one of the basic foundations of what our job is, time. We're still in trying to get to advanced, okay, superior. Now the important thing to pay attention to, I think, is at Ohio State, for example, if we put every hour of class involving Chinese together, and somebody took all those courses and everything, it would be 1,400 hours of courses. 1,400. So that's not even, maybe that's about up to here. About there. Okay. So time is the issue. Time is the problem. So we'll continue, when we continue this discussion, we will talk about ways that we, how do we approach this idea of time? How do we approach the idea of organizing the lives of our learners and get more time into it, more practice, that sort of thing.
So you mean if a student take all the courses in OSU, that's 1,400 hours. So roughly around 5 years if the student doesn't stop taking courses after the course.
Well, if they just do so many hours a week straight, it'd be longer than 5 years. Actually, we call it 8 levels. So basically 8 levels if we do it. But of course, some people, they come in the summer, they do intensive, they put courses together. If you're doing the flagship program, you're taking 3 courses, like 3 Chinese courses at the same time. That's 50. So you can squeeze it into fewer. Aaron just did that. Aaron just spent an academic year squeezing a lot of Chinese into her schedule. The thing to look at is it takes more time to go up a level, right? So every level requires more time, because one thing is it's not just, at this point you might be mastering very quickly pronunciation, some very basic skills, basic patterns and that sort of thing. But the higher you go, the more complex the task is, the more you're doing. So that is it. But these hours, these statistics are basically from government language schools, because government language schools do things that regular universities don't do. What do? They keep track of how much resource it takes to train people to a certain level. So, Williams College, for example, I doubt if anybody could say, how much resource does it take somebody to get to this level of Chinese? They don't ask that question. But in government language schools, they do. So this is a generalization of those statistics, how much time it takes to be. So if you're a government person and you're training people up to that level, there's the cost of doing that per person. If you're in the military, it's about $275,000 to do it. What training? If you're like in the State Department, it's like $500,000 to $600,000 to train. A lot of time, a lot of commitment. So they keep track of that. So that's what that is. Yeah, some people will be more talented than others. Some people will practice more than others. So given the same amount of time, they'll put more practice into that. But you know, the idea, no matter how talented you are, it's still going to take a while. Let's say Bill Gates. So if you read the book Outliers, he explains how Bill Gates became an expert programmer by the time he got to Harvard. How did he do that? What happened in his background? So Bill Gates, let's say, is a relatively talented person. Smart, fast, gets things done. But still, if you look at his background, the background is he had all this exposure, all this practice that other people didn't have. At a time, you know, at a very critical time when most people didn't have the